my name is David McLeod, and I am your life mastery coach, author of the wonderful little book, A Life to Die For, and also one of the co-authors in the best-selling series, The Wellness Universe Guide to Complete Care, Self-Care. I should also mention that this year, I'm going to be lead author in another book that I'm going to be publishing with my guest publisher today. And I'll tell you more about that later. But that book is going to be all about elder wisdom, and I'm really excited about that one. Anyway, welcome to Life Mastery TV, your source for inspiration, empowerment, and fulfillment. This is episode 239, and today we're going to talk about ninja mindset moves. Now, a crucial element that affects our life experiences and something we generally don't think too much about is undeniably our mindset. It operates, for the most part, in the background, shaping perceptions and influencing our reactions, and ultimately determining the quality of the life we lead. Now, when we ignore our mindset and inadvertently, let's say, allow ourselves to operate on autopilot, we may find ourselves bouncing around in reaction mode. Rather than living our lives from a place of ease and grace, we end up fighting fires that we have unintentionally created because we weren't focused on what was important. This kind of reactive approach to life can lead to overwhelm and stress, which in turn can lead to all kinds of mental and physical problems that just add fuel to our already burning and countless stress fires. While the importance of mindset really can't be overstated, it is the linchpin that either propels us forward or holds us back. In acknowledging the impact of mindset, we open ourselves to the possibility of transformation, unlocking the door to a life imbued with purpose, resilience, and boundless potential. For this episode of Life Mastery TV, I have invited back my friend and esteemed colleague and publisher, as I just mentioned a moment ago, the delightful Laura DeFranco, who is going to join me in a deep conversation about the idea of mindset. And well, I'm really looking forward to this because she is an expert on this topic, and she is calling this ninja mindset moves. So please join me in welcoming Laura DeFranco back to our show. Hello, Laura. Thank you for joining me today. It's so great to have you back on the program. I think it's been, well, I know you've been on with me several times, but I think it's been about a year now at least. And so I'm delighted to have you back.
Thanks, David. I love being here and having these discussions with you. And you know, this is like my favorite topic ever. So let's go.
Right. Well, I know that you have a favorite terminology that you like to use. You like to talk, you use the phrase badass a lot. And I'd like to understand where that term came from and what it really means to you.
Thanks for asking. I actually get the question about that word and also the word warrior, same deal. Like, why are you using those words? But I actually use them because I think a warrior or a badass is really showing up in the world, taking responsibility for their awareness practice, their mindset, and their
Mhm.
energy. And when you're doing that every day, you're a badass. Like that, it takes practice, it takes discipline, it takes courage also to show up knowing vulnerability is your strength. And so that's the
Mhm.
short answer for that one.
Right. And well, I mean, I imagine, so I'm looking at my own life, and although I consider myself something of a more enlightened being nowadays, it wasn't always that way. And I can tell you, for the first 40 years or so of my life, I was anything but enlightened. I was living a life that I was kind of following along what the rest of society wanted for me. So I was the exact opposite of a badass back then. So I suspect that your life was kind of similar. You probably, I mean, I'm sure you didn't go through exactly the same kinds of experiences I did, but my guess is you didn't always think of yourself as a badass or as a warrior, even for that matter. So tell me a little bit about what was going on in your early life that maybe led you into this kind of work and trying to find that inner badass warrior within.
When you were introducing the show, you talked about being in reaction mode all the time and you're just triggered and reacting to life. And that creates a lot of suffering. And so I was thinking about that as you were talking about it. I'm like, yeah, reaction versus responding. You take your power back when you can respond to life. And back then, I feel like I was really just in reaction mode to everything because I hadn't really been schooled about awareness and about watching your thoughts and behaviors. And then with awareness, we get a choice, and there is the power and the freedom. So, as a young person, just sort of learning all these things, I wasn't there either. I was just reacting to life and feeling triggered all the time and making really poor choices from that place of trigger and just a lot of things. And of course, I'm one of those people who will say, I don't have any regrets about the path. It got me to where I am today, and I love
Right.
her. And so I look back at that and I'm like, well, it would have been nice to have that awareness earlier, but it is what it is, and it got me to where I am. So,
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think it really makes no sense to have regrets, to be honest. I mean, I understand there may be certain things that you might look back on and say, "Wow, I wish I hadn't done that. That actually caused harm to somebody." Okay, I can understand a little bit of remorse, but I think that's different from regret. You know, and I agree with you. If I hadn't gone through the experiences that I had gone through, I would not have. I would not be in this place today of understanding how important it is to know who I really am. And that level of importance in my mind now is something that I translate into everything that I teach and everything that I coach about, to try and encourage my clients, my students, and all the rest of the people that I engage with really get to know the truth of who you really are. Because until you do that, this whole idea of mindset is just going to be, it's going to be a concept. It's going to be a word. It's going to be a phrase. So, yeah, and you've been talking about this whole idea of warrior and badass, and those are, I guess, labels, if you like, to describe a particular mindset. So let's talk a little bit about this mindset. What exactly is it, and why is it so important?
well, what it is to me is I'll use the awareness word again because it's so important.
Mhm.
So you have to be aware of your thoughts. You got to know what your mind is thinking. You have to
Right.
know the thoughts. You have to understand if they're aligned with your purpose, and what kind of energy you are living in when you choose or continue in negative thoughts versus more healthy positive thoughts. So this is where with awareness you have a choice, and so you have to practice watching your thoughts like a hawk. That's a ninja move. Like, I got to watch that constantly because I don't know about you, but like I feel like it's now or never, man. Like, I want to have this practice daily. Sometimes I need it hourly. And when I am really flowing in watching my thoughts and then choosing my response, maybe I choose not to respond verbally if we're talking about a conversation, or maybe I choose to respond with particular words or whatever it is, right? That's where the power is. Um, so yeah, we'll start there.
Yeah, and as you said, you sometimes you have to do this on a daily basis or even hourly. What that brings up for me is this idea that the idea of making the distinction between a reaction and a response is something that when I first start learning how to do this, I may not understand the difference to begin with, and I may just be reacting, as you say. And it's not until after whatever the situation is has passed that I'm able to look back on it and say, okay, that that way of reacting really didn't serve me. And I would like to shift into a more responsive way going forward. So I think what I have noticed from my life is that gap between reaction, awareness, and now new response was pretty big at first. But as I get more and more adept at it, it kind of, that gap gets narrower and narrower and narrower. And hopefully, when we all reach that state of enlightenment, they are one and the same thing. So I can feel myself starting to react, and I switch instantly into the mindset of responding instead. This is something, this is why I love this topic and calling it a ninja mindset move. Because what is a ninja but a master of some special form of martial art or something like that? And usually you associate a ninja with a black belt, which is why I made that really cute cover image for
I
this
love
with the
that.
ninja cat.
I love
But
that.
yeah. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, so mastery for me has meant, and because I have had a couple decades of training in the martial arts, I love to use the word
Oh,
ninja for this because it really fits. But my mastery was in the quickness with which I could respond or flip it and respond. You said noticing yourself being triggered, and if you can notice soon enough within seconds, that's an almost instantaneous opportunity that you're giving yourself to choose a healthier, better, more aligned thought or action. That's a ninja move. It's fast. It's almost automatic. We're all in a level of practice. No matter where you are in this awareness practice, you're at some level. I remember, I remember being triggered one time when I wrote a blog, and it was a very, very well read blog, probably one of my first, I'll call it viral blogs ever. And when that happens to you're getting hundreds of comments, and I was reading and very excited about all this until I got to the one negative comment, the troll who decided to come into those comments and say something that massively triggered me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I should take the blog down. Maybe I shouldn't be writing about it. I just went into it, man. And
right.
I allowed myself to stay in that awful feeling for about a week. And so that nowadays, first of all, I don't read the comments in case you're wondering, but next, I just know that if I'm feeling the feeling and it's in my heart space a lot of the time, like, that awful feeling, I said something wrong, I did something wrong, right? And I can feel it nowadays, but then I can just stop, pause, take a breath,
Mm-hmm.
and not allow it to dictate my next 7 days, in that case, which was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I spent that long triggered by that. But nowadays I can get it within seconds, minutes. It depends. It depends on how hard it hits home, or how inner circle the insult was. Like, we all have people in our lives that trigger us a little more than others, or situations that trigger us a little more than others, right?
Right.
So those are where my practice is.
Yeah. Well, this is something I talk about all the time. We all have ego minds. And our ego minds love to be competitive. They love to be right. They love to be better than all of these things. And so consequently, if we're not doing the things to be right and to be better than, then they turn their criticisms inward and say, hey, you're not good enough. You got to be better than everybody else. You got to be smarter. You got to be brighter. You got to be this, and this. And that's a constant chatter that goes on for all of us. Now, the only difference between maybe one person and another person is the degree to which that ego mind has control over the person. And that is going to depend on how much inner work that person has done. Now, you were just talking about getting triggered by a comment. I venture to say that whenever someone says something that triggers something like that within me, while I'm in reaction mode, this isn't going to work. But after the fact, I can look at that and I can say, all right, what is the truth within me that I have not been willing to look at? What is the aspect that's coming up here now that maybe needs a little bit of healing? And that is where the real gift comes from. I was sharing with you before we started about that situation that happened to me when I was walking my dog, a couple of years ago, and I got accosted by this man. And the result was that I ended up with a black eye and a bruised hip. And after the fact, I mean, I was in reaction mode when that happened, right? I was in a defensive position. I was trying to protect myself. My dog was useless. He didn't even bark. You know, he just kind of stood around and watched, what are these idiots doing? Anyway, but afterwards, I got to look at this and I realized, okay, there's an opportunity for me to learn something about myself. So now I'm not going to go through the whole story because that's not the point of the conversation. My ultimate point is that no matter what happens in our lives, whether we perceive it as good or bad or ugly or whatever label we want to put on it, every event, every circumstance, every situation that comes into our lives provides us with another opportunity to learn more about ourselves. And sometimes that might be an opportunity that feels painful and invites us to heal an old wound. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I think there's a lot of these opportunities and we just kind of brush them off and say, well, I got away with that one, or whatever. So
Yeah, I think everything is an opportunity. I've learned a couple things about that. I've learned that I can do too much self-reflecting and second guessing also. So there's this piece of me, like you, David, is a healer, and we signed up for this journey of understanding it at the core. And over the decades, I've watched myself self-reflect on something that the lesson, what I should be learning out of it. And there were a few instances where I paused myself and I'm like, no, this is actually an opportunity to stand tall inside of your worthiness and understand that you came from a very heart-centered place, and you're good, Laura. Like, you don't need to second guess this, or you don't need to learn anything else from this. But that is a learning, if you know what I mean. Like,
it's a reminder.
Yeah. So
yeah, and that's a really good awareness, and I'm glad you brought that up too, because just because you have an idea in your mind that you might have done something wrong, that doesn't mean you did something wrong.
Right.
And in fact, I venture to say most of the time, none of us really do anything wrong. We just do what we believe is right based on our current understanding of all the situations around us, and and our current concept of what love really is. Because I do believe that when it really boils down to it, everything that we think, say, do, or feel is motivated at its deepest level by an unquenchable desire to give or receive love. Now, from an outside perspective, it may not always look that way. It may look really dysfunctional. It may look violent, in fact. But ultimately, I think that's what's going on inside whatever person is reacting that way. So if we could remember that, all of us, if we could remember that and maybe have some compassion towards ourselves and towards others, then we can go a long way towards reducing the level of stress in the world. Certainly, we reduce our own stress in that process.
A profound, world-changing practice, what you're talking about. People take that on, things change pretty rapidly, and you're making me think of forgiveness coming in. Like, if we're instead of quick to rage, we were quick to forgive. Wouldn't that be a change?
That would be,
yeah.
I love that idea. Quick to forgive.
From that place you just mentioned, the place of compassion and knowing everyone's coming from just the best they can right that moment with what they have.
Right. Yeah. Well, that would be just a massive elevation of consciousness right there, if we could all do it. Or even if just 10% of us in the world could do that. Can you imagine the change in the whole world dynamic?
They talk about the 10 to 15%. It's all we need to tip the scale.
That's right.
And I love feeling the momentum in the world of this right now, because what I don't know who they are. They've been talking about is that it is tipping, and we do have that 10 or 15%. So we're starting to feel the positive repercussions of that practice that we're all talking about, like today, and
Right.
doing and showing up in our lives with. And I don't know, that gets kind of exciting. It continues to fuel some hope in me that it's worth it, because I'm going to bring the warrior word in again. This is not for the faint of heart, this journey. This is for warriors. Why? Because it takes courage. And when you come up against the feeling of shame inside you, that's a big one. It is an ugly, horrible feeling that makes you feel like you're going to die, right? This is not a path for someone who isn't willing to be curious about that. So it's
Oh,
tough.
there's another good word. Curiosity.
That's a ninja
Say more
move.
about that.
Curiosity is a ninja move, another ninja move. Um, my couple of people in my family and I have this joke about this. We will be watching something go down, and it just is kind of mind-blowing, like what's happening in front of us. Something someone said or did, and we're like, it's a WTF moment, right? And so we have trained ourselves into the reaction or the response of, huh, that's interesting. And that, just switching it to, whoa, what just happened? That's kind of interesting. Like, let me not make that mean anything extra, and let
Right.
me just be curious. Right? Yeah.
Wow, you just said another key word, meaning. You know, that I love that. That is so beautiful. In reality, nothing really means anything except what it is, right?
Right.
And all the other stuff, the interpretation, the conclusion, the judgment, the whole bit is all about up here in this little miniature space. And my interpretations, my conclusions, my judgments are going to be, well, they might be similar, but they're probably going to be different from yours.
Right. And getting back to, well, then who's right? Nobody's right. We're all right. And
Exactly.
I'd rather train myself to not make the happenings of life mean anything. And I don't know if you're an Esther Hicks fan, with the law of attraction, but she talks about this a lot. And she talks about, well, if you don't make it mean anything, and you can move toward a better thought instead in the moment, then of course you take your power back a little bit, because man, we get trashed by these things that happen to us. We dive into the pit of depression and despair and powerlessness and hopelessness, and is not a fun pit to mud wrestle in. And so when she talks about that, I smile a little bit, because we all have things that happen to us all day and the week and month and year, and we're like, okay, that just happened, but what am I making it mean, and how am I choosing to move through my day after or during? And that is ninja,
Right,
really.
right. I'm always fascinated by commentary I hear from certain pundits and stuff who talk about an event and say, this means that so and so has this motivation. And I'm thinking, how can you possibly know anybody's motivation? You know, you're making it up. It's completely fabricated. And you have absolutely no proof of that unless the person said to you, this is my motivation. Uh, we are really, really good fabricators of reality, you know, and it isn't even reality. It's fabricators of illusion is what it is. So yeah, you're right. If I could train myself not to make it mean anything more than what it is, I don't know if I said that quite right, but that's how it landed on me when the way you said it. That would be a big ninja move.
Well, you're bringing up a really good example, and it's one of the reasons why I do not have a television or cable. Like, I'm not gonna get myself um, glued into those kinds of discussions where you can feel the frustration boiling up inside of you. the anger, the confusion of like, how could even anyone say something like that, right? So you, even just talking about it, I'm creating it in me. So
Right.
another thing I think about a lot is like, anger is the poison you give yourself. Guilt, anger, shame, some of these things. And yes, I'm going to look at some of it as the shadow work I need to do. But also, I'm going to realize that if I allow myself to be angry, frustrated about something, and I just go ahead and let myself be in reaction mode, that is something I'm feeding to my body. No, thank you. Like
Yeah.
I would like some more joy, please, and I would like to pull in a little bit of laughter and ease and freedom. And um, gosh, life is short, right? So with the frustration and anger, especially with like media and listening to people talk about BS and just like, yeah. So um, that's just one of the things I am really careful about.
Well, I think that's a great practice, you know. Maybe not only should we get rid of our televisions and cable, but maybe we should be getting rid of these things too, you know?
Yeah, there's a
I
lot of screens.
yeah,
Yes.
I try to keep my phone on airplane mode as much as possible. So, I use some of the features on the phone and I will make calls now and then and I'll check things now and then. But if I don't have it on airplane mode, then I'm constantly being beeped at with, stuff I don't really want to pay attention to. It's like, hey, pay attention to me. Hey, pay attention to me. It's just incessant. Yeah.
It is.
And so that would
I,
be a good practice.
it would. Wouldn't it be great if we could just go back to treating our cell phones like it was the rotary phone attached to the wall? And,
Yeah.
you're going to answer it when you need to, but you can't take it with you.
Yeah.
And
Right.
not even to the other room. So,
Well, it's
you
funny
know,
that you mentioned that. How many times? I mean, I go for a walk with my dog, and I leave my cell phone at home. It's just him and me. We're out there. We're having a walk, and I'm tossing the ball. He's chasing it, whatever. But almost every person I see, including people in cars, are either talking on the phone. They're looking at their phone. They're. I'm thinking, don't you ever separate from that phone? And if you go to a restaurant, it's even worse. I see people sitting in a restaurant, two people at one table, and they're both looking at cell phones. Now, I don't know if they're texting each other or, I mean, it's ridiculous, but they don't seem to be conversing with each other. They don't seem to be interacting with each other. Or if they do, it's like, oh, hey, check this out. And I mean, it's craziness. How do we allow ourselves to get so caught up in something so mundane and so stupid when really the important stuff is in here? How do we do that? How do we get there?
I'm gonna pull back the mindset conversation to the practice of connection. And that's another thing that I mean, I'm guilty of the cell phone stuff, and I watch myself when my kids are in the house, my dog is around, my people in my family or people who are important to me are in front of me, in my face, like right here, in the room. And I have made it a point to remind myself to put that thing down, to push back from my computer. And whoever is in your vicinity is the most important thing,
Right.
period. So that's kind of, I don't even know if I should call it a ninja move, because I feel like it's just a duh, like, but it is awareness that we've lost because of the phones and all the things. And man, there's some scary statistic stuff out there. There's a lot of information about the addictive factors that are in the phone on purpose. And
Sure.
there's a lot of scary information about, this next generation being completely disconnected from their hearts and souls
Right.
because they're wanting the next like on a social media platform, right? And I'm watching my kids, right? They're in their 20s. I'm watching them, and trying to kind of pull them back from that a little bit and be a model for the connection. Now, that's really the only thing we can do. We can't tell anyone to do anything, but we can be a model for the thing, right?
Right.
And so I know that I've been practicing that one lately.
Yeah. Well, you can tell people anything you want to tell them, and they will hear what they want to hear, and they will do what they want to do. Um, well, that's kind of like uh, the idea of should versus could. Um, you know, I like to frame it this way. I never use the word should unless I precede it with a phrase that starts with if. For example, if I want X, Y, or Z to happen in my life, then maybe I should try this. In that case, I think putting should in the sentence is fine. But without that what do you call it, adjectival or adverbial phrase or whatever it is, without that, then you should blah is just complete BS.
Yeah.
It makes no sense at all.
I love that, tying it to a goal that you really want,
Yeah.
a purposeful thing. Like if I want this, then I should probably do that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you already know the actions that you need to be taking if you want the goal. Yeah, you're right. I think that's probably the healthy should.
Yeah, right. Well, most of the time though, yeah, well, I don't know about you, but I know that my ego mind it's constantly telling me what I should or shouldn't be doing, and I have to, well, one of my ninja move practices, and I think I've shared this with you before, is at first I would fight my ego mind, thinking that that would be the best way to, shut it down, baby, shut it down. Well, that has never worked for me because the more I fight my ego mind, the stronger it gets and the louder it gets and so on and so on. So what I discovered is there's a very, very simple way of quieting my ego mind. And I use your phrase. I say, oh, that's interesting. Tell me more. And just listening to the ego mind. What happens is the energy starts to kind of dissipate and it actually becomes more friendly and more supportive. And I mean, it might take a little practice, but it's a powerful, powerful move. Because what I find, and maybe you've had the same experience, my ego mind sounds an awful lot like a child having a temper tantrum. Yeah. And so sometimes I have to pretend to be the loving parent and just say, come here, honey. I just sit on my lap and tell me what's going on. And all of a sudden, the ego mind starts purring in my arms, and saying, "Well, I'm kind of upset about this," and blah blah blah. It starts sounding like a real person that you can talk to. And then I can also say, "Well, I really totally 100% know exactly what you're feeling because I've been there. I know it. And here's what I did, and here's how I got healthy, and this is what and so on." And I would say, and by the way, I'm here to support you now. I'm here to be your loving parent. I'm here to guide you and help you. And I really appreciate it when you see something that might be dangerous and you tell me about it. Because that's what the ego mind's job is, right? Is to keep me safe. So if I can do that, and I'm getting better and better at this now, it's just becoming so much easier over time. It becomes almost like a parent dealing with a child. And the child is slowly starting to learn how to share its information without going into panic mode and yelling and screaming and temper tantruming and all that kind of stuff. So that's one of my ninja moves.
Yeah, it's just a powerful, life-changing one, actually. I've found two versions of that voice, if you will. One is that little kid, and for me, the difference is she has no voice. She
Huh.
hides her, there's nothing coming out of that mouth. She's running into fear more than having the temper tantrum, if you will. So to recognize the little girl voice and like everything you just said about parenting that small child who needs what they need in the moment to feel safe, that's been a big one. And the other version of this that I noticed was the other kind of voice. She wasn't quiet and shy and fearful, but she was this voice she was hearing was more like, you're not good enough. It was very critical. This or that. And I recognize that one in my conversations, similar to your ninja move, is I named that voice.
Mm.
She's not the little Laura, she's Martha. I gave her a name. And so as soon as you can separate, that's the awareness, that's the ninja move, is you get to have a conversation with that fear, that voice, that ego mind, whatever you guys want to call it, right? You make this gigantic space of awareness and understanding there. And then that voice isn't you. That voice is someone you can have a conversation with. Thank you, Martha. I know you're just trying to protect me, but I got this. Like, I'm good.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And it's not like you're trying to ignore it, bash it, cover it. It's like befriending it and saying, hey, we got this. You know,
Yeah.
I got it. Thank you for
Yeah.
your service, but I'm going to choose something else today, you know? And
Yeah, right.
yeah, so that's been extremely helpful. And when you're the most triggered, you'll fall back into a pattern of not separating again. And so
That's right.
that's where it is right there. And that's, look what I'm doing. Okay, deep breath, separate. Let me talk to Martha again, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and as you said, oh, look what I'm doing. I I love the way you said that. Oh, look what I'm doing. It's like that curiosity and that sense of adventure of the child. Oh, look, I have another opportunity to check this out. It's pretty exciting when you can look at it that way, rather than, oh God, look what I'm doing. There's a whole difference in the attitude. And mindset and attitude, they're virtually indistinguishable, right? I mean, one is certainly affecting the other. Maybe it's a cyclical arrangement, I don't know. But anyway, yeah, I love that. That's really cool.
Curiosity is also just a way to be gentle with yourself. It's self-compassion. It's the attitude you would take with a best friend or a colleague, and you need to take it with yourself as well, right? And we are our worst critics. We I don't know if it's curiosity all the time when I'm disappointed with myself, right? So to catch the self-talk is a ninja move. And
Right.
I say talk, but I mean thought, to catch the self sabotaging BS that you're doing to yourself. It immediately you're going to realize you're going to do that to others. If you're doing it to yourself, that is the attitude. So you have to catch it with yourself. And it never works if you don't catch it with yourself. You're trying it with everyone else, but not yourself, not going to work.
Right.
So, and that can be extremely powerful game changer, I think.
Yeah, right. Well, you just said something else that I know you said this before and you're repeating it now. That's great. Talking about self-compassion. Very, very important. The whole process of learning how to do something new has to be framed in a context of self-compassion, gratitude, and forgiveness, because you're never going to get it right on the first try. Well, you might, I suppose, but most people don't get it right on the first try. So you're going to try something and it might not work. Okay, be gentle with yourself. Say, this particular way doesn't work. How can I make an adjustment so that the next time I get better result? That's kind of how we're doing it. And when you ask the question, how can I do this next time to get a better result, you're inviting your own soul, your own spirit, to provide you with that guidance and wisdom for the next iteration of whatever it is you're trying to learn.
Yes, mistakes and failures are stepping stones. They're learning opportunities and just moving you forward a little bit if you can stay inside of the practice of watching what's happening. You're making me think of another example. You could also have stuff happen where you were coming from a completely experienced and solid, grounded, heart centered space, but the other person receives it through their wounded filter and has
Right.
now attacked you for doing something wrong. And rather than you saying, I didn't do anything wrong, I've just learned that the first words are, oh, I'm so sorry you received it like that. It wasn't my intention, right? So, but sometimes we're just so quick to think, oh God, what did I do wrong? I didn't mean to offend the person. I thought I was coming from this genuine place, which you were in the moment, right? So we have to also understand that other people are working around us with their own filters that are so complicated.
Right.
So we can take that awareness into these conversations and not have to be right, because I could have been right in a recent example. I could have just blasted back with, well, blah, 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 you know. And so I think
I
another
can't imagine you ever doing that.
well, another ninja move is to apologize quickly. And just because you apologize doesn't mean you were wrong. It just means you genuinely want to know or want to tell the person you're sorry for whatever that exchange created. Right? It wasn't
Yeah, you
perfect.
know, I'm gonna have to argue with you a little bit there. I've always found that apologies are generally, let me just say that I find apologies to be dubious at best. And so to refresh what you just said. So you've said something to a person, you've had a heartfelt expression that came from a place of love. The other person, for some reason, had a reaction and started saying, "Oh, how dare you say something like that?" Whatever they say. And I now say, so tell me more. What's going on for you? I'd like to understand what you're feeling right now, because I certainly had no intention of hurting you or hurting your feelings. This way, I am now inviting them to tell me what's really going on, and I'm not apologizing for what I did. But they may see it as I'm just opening to, please help me understand what's going on for you, so I can make my next response from a place of love, or however you want to phrase it. I'm just nervous about saying something like, "Well, I'm sorry you received it that way." It sounds like, oh, now you're telling me I didn't receive it right.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
So
words weren't perfect, but coming from a place of love is the perfect thing.
of course, yeah,
And, inviting them to express their feelings is always a wonderful way to go. Because most people just don't feel heard or
right.
seen that. And yeah.
Yeah, the whole process of listening to understand is it's a powerful, powerful process. And what that means is you listen and you don't say, "Oh, it sounds like blah blah blah." You're now making that about you when you say stuff like that. Say, "Okay, now may I reflect what I'm hearing? May I summarize what I think I heard you say?" And just simply reflect. And then if you get it right, great. If you get it wrong, they will correct you. That's the beauty of listening to understand, you know? Uh, and it's a powerful tool unto itself. I think
Yeah.
that if I could always, and I wish I still haven't reached that place of always doing it, if I could be in that place of always being open to listening to understand, how many interactions do I have that would never lead to any kind of uh, what do you call it, conflict? I mean, what is conflict really, but just a difference of perspective?
Yes. Yeah, you're so right. That's that a one very powerful skill in life and everything else that you're doing.
Yeah,
Um, Watching your reactions, watching yourself in the play with another human, right? It's complex, sometimes complicated, um, but I can't keep coming back to the word gentle. Gentle with yourself and other people for some of the reasons you already talked about today, especially
right,
right now in the world and all the
right,
things. Yeah.
right. And gentle. That's a really good word. I like that word, but it doesn't necessarily mean being acquiescent or subservient or unassertive or anything like that. It just means opening the space for both, or however many people there are, to exist or to coexist within that space together from a place of love. It doesn't mean that I can't say something with a high degree of passion and excitement and strength behind my words, but I don't have to attack with those words. I can still be gentle and assertive at the same time.
For sure. My martial arts studio was called Gentle East Taekwondo.
Gentle
And
east.
East, as in east, west, north, south.
Okay.
And it's just interesting, right, that the word gentle is in a martial arts because
Right.
believe me, I landed some axe kicks on people's heads, right? So like you're in practice, but it's really a mind. That's what we're talking about today. It's a mind practice
Yeah, exactly.
that affects
Yeah.
everything else.
So one thing that we haven't really talked too much about here, I mean, I think we've kind of skirted the issue or suggested it many times, but the whole idea of stress and overwhelm, and how life itself presents all kinds of challenging situations for us. Talk a little bit about how we can, well, talk about how we inadvertently increase stress through our reaction, and how we can then invert that and reduce stress by going back into response. Talk a little bit about that, and what is the mindset ninja move for that?
First thing I thought of when you said that is just really if you're in a process of trauma or post trauma, and we're talking not normal everyday stresses. We're talking about the overload, the pile on, where you get to the place of recognizing a capacity in yourself and that you're at capacity. It's like the universe is really forcing you into having to use some tools because you can physically feel the anxiety inside of your body. And those are dangerous and scary times where you actually notice yourself at capacity. So I want to talk about that only because it's personal perspective for me. I've had to move to meditation. I've loved meditation all my life. I've done various forms that have worked for me. Primarily, my journaling is a meditative practice. It is
Right.
a movement of energy for me. It's a place where I can move all the thoughts, the stress stuff out, and I can shift my energy. But when you get to a certain place where things aren't working, your tools aren't working for you anymore. There's the pile on, the chaos, the overwhelm feeling inside. I've had to maneuver to getting still way more often and allowing feelings to be there, practicing what that feels like. And yeah, I guess it's just that simple for me. I just have to keep coming back to stillness because your mind will ruminate. And as soon as you're stressed and it's going into that mud pit again, it's funny, the visual I get is of a deep well, and you are at the bottom in the mud, and there is no ladder. So you have fallen down that deep in your mind in ruminating the stress thoughts, the worries, the anxieties over and over and over. This is where sometimes even masters need a new tool to wake themselves up out of that and
Right.
choose something healthier. So meditation is where I go with that, journaling all the time. And sometimes when I need a kick in the ass, I gotta put my headphones on, and it's either sound healing or it's like the best EDM track I can find.
So
So
dancing. Yeah.
sometimes I need a
Mhm.
blast out so that I can relax. Yeah, dance, sing, whatever. I mostly sing in my car with the loud music, um, and you and I could sit and talk about 100 different kinds of tools, right? There's so many. I think what I want to say about that is keep trying. If nothing's working, there's always another thing to try. And not every one thing works every single time you use it. So you may need to switch it up that day. Just listen to your body and try something new. Yeah.
Right. Well, I think meditation is a powerful, powerful tool and something that most people don't really fully understand. I think that everybody has their own perspective of meditation, but I think that the cliche version of it is you're sitting with your legs cross-legged and your hands out in a special pose and your eyes are closed and you're just kind of breathing quietly. Well, that's certainly one way of doing it. But ultimately, the purpose of meditation is to quiet this ego mind. That's really what your goal is. And the best way to quiet that is to bring your awareness into this present moment. If you can do that, doesn't matter how you do it. You could be out walking your dog. You can be doing yoga. You can be riding a motorcycle. You can be skiing down a hill. Anything you do that brings your attention, your focus into the present moment helps you to stop thinking about, worrying about things that happened in the past or being concerned about what might happen tomorrow or the next day or the day after that. Those things start to fade away and you just become still inside. You're asking yourself, well, how can I be still if I'm riding a motorcycle? Well, it's not about the movement of the body. It's more about the movement of the mind. So if you can quiet the mind, think about it. If you're riding a motorcycle and you're doing some of this extreme riding, I'll tell you, you're not thinking about paying that bill tomorrow. You're thinking about making sure you do this turn just so, or this jump or whatever. That's what you're thinking about. So you see, that's what the beauty of any kind of an activity, and you could be doing it by washing the dishes, sweeping the floor. I love doing tasks like that because they have they're not really taxing my body in any way. I think dishwashing is one of my favorite activities, believe it or not, because while I'm doing it, I ain't thinking about anything else.
I always
So
hate the
meditation will take any kind of form that you like, as long as your attention is brought back to the present moment. That's really what it's about.
Yes, it is. I hate to use the M word for that reason, as people misunderstand.
Yeah.
I ran uh, to meditate. A repetitive action in your body, out in the woods, looking at the trees, right? Be
Oh
in
my
your
God,
body.
yes.
Yep. And so
Yeah.
motorcycle, I totally get. Driving in my car, I feel like that a lot of the time. But interestingly enough, if you pick an activity where your mind can still go, that's why motorcycle is brilliant. You guys get this, right? The difference. Like I can drive my car because it's kind of like automatic and I can do it, but on a motorcycle, you better be paying attention in the moment. And that's why martial arts were such a brilliant sport to choose, you in sparring especially. If you were not in your body in the moment, you would get kicked in the head. So you had to be present. And I'm talking full mind body presence. You exactly can't think about the bills. You weren't thinking about your relationship problem or whatever. You had to be there. So that is definitely my favorite form of meditation.
Yeah, it's great. Well, even Eckhart Tolle in his Power of Now, he talks about if you are in that moment, in that present moment, everything is perfect in that moment. You are here. You are here now, you know? And all those other things that were bugging you before you got into that here now moment, they're still going to be there when you're done, if they ever really existed. But the point of it is, if you want to reduce stress and overwhelm, that's one of the best ways of doing it. And that is just a part of your overall mindset. Okay, so make it a practice to do something to bring yourself into the present moment, whatever it might be. So the other thing that you had mentioned as part of your write-up was this idea of setting boundaries. And I want to make sure we cover that. Before I have one more question I want to ask you before we get there. So what do you think? Talk a little bit about how setting boundaries is a ninja mindset move.
The longer I've spent on mastering mindset, the more I realize that part of that is setting boundaries with people so that you maintain your mindset, so that you are maintaining that healthy place of thinking and believing and behaving, and you're not compromising because somebody said this to you or is telling you that's the wrong way to do it. It's right for you. So sometimes I have to set boundaries. I'm trying to think of the best example, but I might have a friend who loves to tell me about all of the tragedy in the news that day. And she starts in, so I'm like, friend, I'd rather not talk about that today. How are you?
Yeah,
And
right.
so it's my gentle boundary setting of no, I don't want to hear. I don't want to be filled with all the bad news. I don't feel like right this moment with you in front of me that's important to me. I want you. I want to share this love moment with you. I want to, so you get the drift. But
Of course. Yeah.
there can be more difficult boundaries to set in close relationships. Of course, there's boundaries in business relationships. But the more I've stepped into who I fully am, you started the show talking about that a little bit, the better I'm at. I am at setting these boundaries and living a life that I really feel proud of. It doesn't mean I don't rub people wrong a time or two. They don't like especially people who have known you the longest, and you start setting new boundaries about what they're like, whoa, wait a minute. But that's been challenging, but I'm practicing. It's all a practice, lifelong.
I think boundaries are amazing. But I also think that people need to understand that a boundary is just a temporary energetic thing. Because, I might say no to you right now in this moment when you ask for something. And 5 minutes from now, you might ask me again, and I might still be a no. But I might have shifted a little bit. Maybe in my 5 minute or whatever the interlude is between those two interactions, something has come up for me to help me realize that I really do need to somehow participate with you. So the boundary is just something that exists right now, and it may completely shift in the next moment. So don't think of a boundary as a hard and fast rule, and trust that the people who are truly in connection with who they really are, when they set a boundary, they're doing it from their place of where they are right now. That's how we ought to be treating boundaries. Okay, thank you. See you later. Come back 10 minutes later. Hey, want to play bridge? I don't know, whatever. Actually,
Right,
that
right.
does sound good. We'll say yes. But you
Yeah,
get my point.
they're shifting, they're dynamic, and they are based on how you need to do it in your moment, and the next
That's right.
moment could be different. Yeah.
All right. So earlier you talked about, your inner child being someone who had no voice. And you also talked about this other manifestation of your ego mind, this character that you've named Martha. Now, what I want to know is, how do Martha and this child play into the amazing publishing organization that you have created? And I want you to share a little bit about this publishing organization and what you do and why you do it.
Thank you, David. The quiet little girl is not there so much anymore, and that's fine. She accompanies me onto the stage when she's having performance anxiety sometimes, and
Right.
I grab her hand and I'm like, come on, we're gonna do this because we got a big purpose and we can do this together, right? And so that's just how I deal with that. The Martha, the outside critic, I also I hear her on the stage sometimes, right? What if somebody thinks I'm a fool? What if I, say something wrong, blah blah. But I know for sure now that sharing my story saves lives, it changes lives and saves lives. And so I've kind of moved past letting that paralyze me, and that's the biggest thing. And helping people publish their amazing brave words into the world, their healing work, the work that they are leaving a legacy with the work that changes the world, right? I don't want to let anything get in the way of that reason I was born. And so I think that kind of sums it up a little bit. I want people to come into my world if they need a little help being courageous about writing their stories and publishing for the first time. Great, I got you. And let's change the world together, because that's how we do it.
Okay, so now I'm going to call you out because you're just really downplaying this. When did you start Brave Healer Productions?
So Brave Healer Productions was founded in 2016.
All right. So now I want you to just tell people what you have accomplished in those 8 years with Brave Healer Productions.
Oh, it's been an amazing, crazy ride, y'all. We're celebrating Amazon bestseller number 75 this month. And we are an award-winning publisher for holistic health and wellness professionals and the businesses that serve those professionals. We have established Brave Kids books for kids' stories. And we're so much more than a publisher. I grew the company to an empire with just little old me in 2016 to 23 independent contractors nowadays, and people who are really joined me in this vision. We want to wake the world up to what's possible for healing, and to have come that far in that short amount of time has been a dream come true, really. I practiced following the breadcrumbs from the universe. I got really good at that. And so here we are. We're doing it. And David, you're a part of that. And
Well, thank you.
the book coming up, the Elder Wisdom book. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to have some of the world's most wise, creative, amazing authors in that book. And I hope you can hear in my voice that excites me, is getting these communities together to share like we were around the campfire, like they did in the day, right? Yeah. So thank you for asking.
Well, I mean, I have been part of your little empire here for quite a few years. I think I can't remember when I first joined you. I believe it was with the Wellness Universe Guide books. So that was what, 2020, 2021, somewhere in that time frame. And I remember meeting you in 2018, I think, at a Soul Treat event, and you were just kind of getting started. And I recognized the energy and the excitement that you had going on. I said, "Here's somebody I want to stay connected to." So I'm first of all, I'm just in awe of everything that you've done. I think it's amazing, and I know that it is making a difference. And I have had the good fortune to be a participant now, I think, in 6 different books that you've published. And I'm going to be a lead author in another one and another co-author sometime next year. So I don't know, I guess we're married in some way.
The coolest thing about all of this, and just thank you for giving me a little blast from the past. And sometimes you have to pause and celebrate where you've come from and how much has happened. But
Right.
I think one of the biggest things is that I'm establishing a company that will be giving back in big ways. So
Right.
our projects are serving our healers, and we're serving the world with these amazing books, but we're also giving back to communities and nonprofits and charities and places we believe in who are also doing big work in the world. And I love the ripple. And
Yeah.
so you're part of that ripple. So thank you.
Well, thank you for saying that. Um, and I want to just acknowledge, I see Scott just joined us, Scott Holmes, who's also a writer here, and he's going to be participating in the Elder Wisdom book. Welcome, Scott. Thank you for being here. But our time is just about up here. Laura, I just want to say, do you have any final advice, suggestions, or wisdom that you'd like to share about ninja mindset moves before I close it out?
Yes, remember, you were born so you are worthy. Your message matters. What if the thing you're still a little afraid to share is exactly what someone needs to hear to change their life? It is time to be brave. Thank you, David.
Beautiful. Yeah, and it's the brave words that change the world, as you say. Okay, well, I just want to say thank you again, Laura, for being here, and to all of you who are watching either the recording or the live presentation. I just want to say, from the transformative power of awareness, especially during times of stress, to the role of life's purpose in shaping mindset resilience, you can practice many strategies for mastering your mindset. We've given you a few ideas here. There are lots more. What you want to do, I believe, is to learn the ninja mindset moves and bring them to bear in your life, because it'll make a huge difference in how you show up. So thank you all for watching today's program. And please remember, you can catch the recordings of this and every other episode on my website at lifemasterytv.com. And finally, I'd like to invite you to remember to practice my life mastery mantra every single day. It's easy to remember, and it goes like this. I gratefully forgive the imperfect being I have been in the past. I gratefully accept the magnificent being I am right now. I gratefully welcome the evolved being I am becoming in each new moment. So until we meet again, I'm David McLeod, your life mastery coach, wishing you love, light, and blessings on your continuing journey. And I will see you next time on Life Mastery TV. Bye-bye.